everyone, and now let us move on to the next significant impact on food prices and poverty, which is the trade restrictions. So, trade restrictions is countries have implemented trade related policies to increase domestic supply and reduce prices, which has made the global food crisis worse. So, this restriction is when countries decide to limit the export of food to keep prices lower within their borders and to make sure that their own people have enough to eat. While this might seem like a good way to keep prices lower at home, it actually makes the global food crisis even worse. So when countries block exports, the global supply shrinks, prices rise even further, and importing countries like poorer nations struggle to afford enough food. It's a vicious cycle that hits the poorest communities the hardest, both as consumers who can't afford food and producers who can compete. And this issue highlights how interconnected the world is when it comes to food. A crisis in one area quickly spreads everywhere else. To fix this issue, countries need to work together, whether it's making trade policies more cooperative or ensuring food is affordable for everyone. It's not easy, but without a team effort, the poor will keep bearing the brunt of these problems. Thank you.
High food prices and poverty have typically negative consequences, but there could be a few indirect or long-term perspectives that some might have argued that there is a positive impact or could be beneficial to us humans. Number 1, increased demand for innovation. Higher food prices can encourage and innovate agricultural practice, food technologies, and other sustainable practices. Farmers and companies might be more motivated to develop more food products at lower cost. And lastly, incentive for local food productions. Higher prices of food can encourage communities to grow their own food, which can lead to local agriculture, urban farming, and food independence.
Well, in the developed country, most people were able to deal with the crisis reasonably well as a result of well-functioning safety nets. However, people in many relatively poor, import-dependent countries, especially in the Philippines, experienced large price hikes that had permanent effects on their future income and their ability to escape poverty. Well, small farmers and poor consumers are extremely vulnerable to poverty as a result of unstable commodity prices. As rising food prices can reduce access to nutritious food. As food prices rise, individuals and families, especially those with limited incomes, are forced to cut back on food purchases or choose cheaper, less nutritious options. It can also increase hunger and malnutrition. It can increase poverty and inequality. Why? Because rising food prices disproportionately affect low-income households who spend a larger share of their income on food. This can push families into poverty, exacerbate income inequality, and create a vicious cycle of hardship. Next is the inflation and reduced purchasing power. Well, food price increases contribute to overall inflation, eroding the purchasing power of consumers and reducing their ability to afford other essential goods and services. And strained budgets and financial stress. As rising food costs can put significant pressure on household budgets, leading to financial stress, debt, and difficulty meeting other essential expenses. And lastly, it can reduce agricultural investment. because high input costs, including fertilizer and energy, can discourage farmers from investing their operations, leading to reduced agricultural productivity and potential future food shortages. Additionally, it is important to note that food represents a large share of farmer income and also a significant share of the budget of low-income consumers. As a result, big changes in food prices have a large negative impact on the real incomes of small landholders and poor families. For that reason, even temporary reductions in prices for farmers or price hikes in prices for consumers can cause permanent effects on income, leading to poverty traps.
Food prices have increased dramatically in recent years, driven by factors like the recent COVID-19, the war in Ukraine, and high energy costs. And today, I'm going to discuss the food prices increases by year. First, in 2020, food at home prices increased by 3.5% and food away from home prices increased by 3.4%. In 2021, all food prices increased by 3.9%. In 2022, food prices increased by 9.9%, and it is the fastest increase since 1979. In 2023, food at home prices increased by 5%, which was lower than 2022.